Mm-hmm.
David, every week we end the show saying that we'll be back next week if we still have a country. And more, it's been like, that's, at first it was a joke.
It was
and
funny.
More and more, it's like,
not funny.
It's not really a joke. And the subtitle of your book, Trumpocalypse, is Restoring American Democracy. So I assume that you agree that we are losing our democracy because of Trump. So what can we do? What do you propose we do to begin to restore American democracy?
Well, Trumpocalypse is full of a series of practical suggestions, big and small. But before I get to any of those, I want to say something about this your final question. And I've heard you pose this in video and podcast. I am not an optimist by temperament, but one of the things I have felt more and more strongly through the Trump years is I have become an optimist by conviction, and that the America you believe in, it's underneath the rust and the dirt. It's there. And in fact, one of the things that has been going on, this is, I think, going to be one of the most important legacies, and I hope maybe the only legacy of the Trump presidency, is that you're seeing one of these periodic revivals of the American conscience that glows at intervals every generation or so. What Trump did is, life is full of petty cruelties, and it's easy to just take them as part of life, especially if you're on the weather side of the fair weather side of those cruelties. If you're a man, looking at the cruelties that come to women. If you're old, looking at cruelties that come to the young. If you're more affluent, looking at those faced by the less affluent, at black and white, native-born immigrant. So what Trump does every day is he takes something that was a petty cruelty and he puts it on the Jumbotron in the middle of Times Square, and he makes it by a million. I mean, did people make casual comments about the appearances of women sometimes in a way that maybe they shouldn't? Okay, so he just does that times a million, and you all have to look at it. And he's the president, the most visible human being on earth. You can't not look at it. And as you look at it, you have to ask yourself, so what do I think of that? I can't ignore it. It's too big. And millions of people are saying, I don't like it. It's not nice. Shouldn't be like that. And so we've had, first with Me Too, and now with this second round of Black Lives Matter building on in 2014, 2015. They remind me of like the temperance movement and votes for women in the century ago. They don't exactly have political agendas. I mean, there's no Me Too law that anybody's going to pass. They are cultural changes, like the temperance movement says. The temperance movement said, just men, drink less. Don't spend all your money at the saloon. Don't beat your wives when you come home. Just drink less. Promise to drink less. And I think you see them all over the place with arising from this. There's this kind of impulse to do things better. And I think that the theme of the 2020s, I sometimes think that the theme of the 2020s is it may not be a period of enormous party political movement. It may be much more a period of cultural and social movement. And powered above all by the departure of the baby boom generation from active political life. And I say that as someone who's born in 1960, the last year of the Eisenhower. These are my people, so I can talk about them.
I think that it's interesting because I do believe that Trump has put everything on the Jumbotron. And I do believe that most people are repulsed by the behavior, are repulsed by the consistent insults, by the blatant racism and discrimination. But I'm so confused. I'm so confused by the 40%. I am confused by the 40% of people in this country, and sometimes between 40 and 45%. That's just a little too close to 50 to me, that will follow this man off of a cliff. That they are literally right now signing waivers that say if they fall ill in Oklahoma from the coronavirus because he doesn't want them to wear masks because he thinks they're creepy, that they don't get to sue. I'm so confused by that.
Well, let's make it a little more. Let's make the confusion a little sharper for David, because not only is there 40% of America, but Trump will win the white vote by a significant margin
Oh,
by
yes.
at least 10 points.
Mhm.
And he will win white men by a very comfortable
Like 30.
margin. Can you, and I know you're not part of that group, but can you help explain that group?
Well, those are two different. So let me deal with Danielle's point first. This is something that is a bit of Trump brainwashing that you need, that he's implanting in even his opponents. When Trump is getting 42, 45% approval, that is not all people who love him. The people who will follow him through thick and thin, that's maybe a third of the country.
Right.
So that he's doing, because remember how in trouble he was through the Republican primaries through early on. What he's taking is a core group of people who are really committed to him and to his message, and adding to them, the years from 2017, 2018, first half of 2019 were very good years. If you ask people questions, how are your finances? Are you optimistic about the future? What do you think of your personal health care? You got stronger answers in 2017, 2018, first half of 2019 than in any year since 1998. The right track, wrong track numbers. I mean, it was short-lived because his protectionist trade policies caught up with him and the economy began to get soft in the second half of 2019, and we're probably heading for economic trouble anyway. But he's adding a kind of voting for the status quo group to his core base. And I think one of the things that he's discovering right now, the president's probably at about 38 right now with the pandemic, that the people who are saying, I don't know, things look pretty good. He seems to be, I don't like the way he talks, but can't argue with success. They're included in the 45%. So I agree with Danielle that the core Trump group represents a problem for American society, especially since they get a lot more than 33% of the political power. And a lot of the book is about that. But I just, and it's a serious problem, but you don't want to make the problem bigger than it really is, because a lot of his support is pretty contingent. And it's going to be a bad year for him in 2020, I'm confident.
Well, it's already been a bad year for a majority of us, so I really would like it to be a bad year for Donald Trump.
You're predicting a loss?
I think it's going to be quite a bad loss, yeah. And I don't think we get 60-40 blowouts anymore because of negative polarization, but I think it's going to be, remember, last time he got less of the vote than Al Gore, John Kerry, or Mitt Romney, and barely more. He got half a point more than Michael Dukakis. He used it very efficiently. It was placed well. But this idea that he had a lot of people behind him, that's a lie that he tells. And be careful about believing it.
Yeah.
As to the support of whites and men, I mean, Republicans have had the white vote since the middle 1960s.
Right.
And it's a mixture of resentments of various kinds. It's a mixture of the distribution of the vote, where whites are much more likely to live in rural America and to be rural people who are sort of cut off from some developments anyway. And we live in a time of, not literal because it's a peaceful time, but of moral and cultural group on group conflict. And so what we have seen is, as America has become more diverse, whites have become a more self-conscious group. It didn't used to be in the North. In the North, 50 years ago, the most important political divisions were between whites, right? They're Catholics versus Protestants, other such groups. As whites have become a more diminished group, they've acquired a group solidarity. And that is going to be a factor in the politics of the 21st century. And that is going to be a very difficult thing to manage. And I talk in the book about how some ways to manage it are. But I think the goal of a politics for the 21st century is not to deny that there's going to be group on group conflict, not to deny that for a long time to come, different groups are going to vote in different ways because of culture and perceived interest. You need to take the toxicity out of it. And you need to change the rules about what's legitimate in group competition. So so the question is not how do you change the way white voters or rural white voters vote. The question is, how do you make it sure that their votes don't count for any more than anybody else's? And how do you make it so that votes are weighted in a more equal way? Those are things we can do. And one of the things I, as a conservative type of reformer and a reformer type of conservative am interested in are things you can do that are feasible. Not miracles, but things that can actually pass House, Senate, get a presidential signature, and make a difference.